Hello, welcome back to Turdtowns, the channel that brings you the lesser known places in the UK. For good, but usually for bad reasons. Today it's going to be some more of those bad reasons as we head off to Lincolnshire. This was not an easy video to make. Lots of false information out there on the internet, plus Lincolnshire is massive and it's the second largest county in England. However, it is sparsely populated with only 750,000 residents. I want to start the video today with a rare bit of praise. I reckon Lincolnshire is a bit better than it gets credit for. I found the landscape and scenery to be more varied than my last few videos, but there's also towns that get a lot of hate. Let's use Sleaford as an example. It was nicer than where I live. This county is absolutely massive, and from what I heard I was going to be in an impoverished hellhole, so I'd been dreading making this video. And it was a lot of driving, and I started out with 16 places on my list, and I quickly found out that many did not make the cut. I reckon we should all stop hating on places that aren't actually that bad. If you live somewhere that's alright, then tell the world, because you will encourage more people to come and drive money into your town. I was fairly impressed with Lincolnshire, but it can't be denied that the steaming turds which are here are some of the worst in the UK. Don't forget to hit like, share and subscribe to help Turdtowns thrive. Number 7. Cleethorpes. Opening the list today, we've got the seaside town of Cleethorpes with a population of 29,678. Yeah, this is actually supposed to be a place people come for their holidays. Talk about budget holidays. This must be where the homeless come on holiday because it's scraping the bottom of the barrel in terms of a UK holiday. If you were given the choice of a week in Cleethorpes or a week in the office, it would be a closely run affair. There is stuff on the seafront promenade, but it feels more like a shanty town of decaying huts rather than large attractions of somewhere like a Great Yarmouth. Not very impressive. Smashed glass and litter lays everywhere around your feet as you struggle to comprehend if this is a holiday spot or just a down on its luck town. The town is situated on the banks of the River Humber and the beach is genuinely nice. I didn't hate it here, but if you compare it to other seaside resort towns I've visited recently, it's really kind of lacking in amenities. Cleethorpes has the third highest crime rate in the county of 161 in 1,000. It was even the worst in the county in 2023. Most of the crimes seem to be linked to a boozy night out, so maybe give that a miss if you come here. Now unfortunately I didn't film it, but the huge Pleasure Island theme park has been sat empty in Cleethorpes since 2016. Developers wanted to spend 65 million on it, turning it into lodges and flats, but it's all gone a bit quiet now. Just what you need in a turd town is a ginormous boil hanging off the backside of Cleethorpes. The buildings in Cleethorpes are actually pretty nice and they're a sign of its past Victorian grandeur. The price is just 167,000, making it one of the cheapest on today's list. And here is of course the highlight of this video, the telephone exchange. And it's a pretty good one actually, it's just a stone's throw from the beach and also it's got a lovely public toilet right across the road, really adding to the turdy nature of the place. Not sure if this one's still in use, but it's quite a big one. I didn't hate Cleethorpes. It just needs to move on from its past as a tourist destination, have a bit of a clean up and a scrub, and maybe next time it will avoid this list. But for now, it's a bit of a conundrum. It's depressing and boring, so you turn to drink, but you know you're going to get into some trouble at the pub. So what do? Don't come here. That's what you do. Number 6. Grantham. Grantham is a town with a population of 44,898. It is the birthplace of Margaret Thatcher, and if she could see her town now, no doubt she'd be proud that they have continued our tradition of closing everything down. There is a statue of her in the town which I stupidly didn't film, but it regularly gets eggs lobbed at it. Grantham has the most run-down shopping streets on today's video. You just feel miserable walking around here. The whole place is on the verge of collapse. Buildings are either boarded up, covered in scaffolding or smashed to oblivion. Even the Arts Centre, one of the grandest buildings in the town, it's not a good first impression. This whole town looks trashed. How is it that in a day and age where we have a new barbershop opening on every street corner like a diseased nightwalker offering a 2-for-1 discount, that old John's Barbers was unable to succeed? The George Shopping Centre is so bad that they've had to barricade off the entire upper floor, which is actually a real shame because I like the style of this mall. It looked like a hotel or a fancy train station. It had some character and a sea of mediocrity. Fortunately, it's not the only mall in the town centre. This is pretty much the only place you're going to find functioning shops. Everything else may as well be bulldozed. So, you know who else has close ties to Grantham? Isaac Newton. He went to school here back in the day. Good thing he's not around now because he wouldn't understand the gravity of the situation in Grantham. It's extremely unappealing. Grantham only has the 9th worst crime in the county, but don't bust out the bevies quite yet because it's still bad at 114 in 1,000, demonstrating that there's a lot of crime in this county. In terms of housing, it's a real tale of the haves and the have-nots. There is some wealth in this town, but then there's other parts in the top 10% most deprived in England. Most of the rich folks are up here on a rare Lincolnshire hill, meaning that they can look down on the poor people and at the same time feel special that they have one of the few Lincolnshire hills. The average house price here is $329,000, pretty expensive for Lincolnshire. The biggest selling point of the town is a festival. Now many people from Grantham partake in the yearly Swing-a-thon festival located nearby. The 3-day extravaganza features the gorgeous grannies of Grantham and the biggest used underwear shop outside of the internet. Have you ever dreamed of paying £200 to watch toothless lumps mate in a gazebo? What about cosplaying as the Iron Lady? Well, get yourself down to where your gran meets the ham. Number 5. Gainsborough. Gainsborough, or Loughborough, is a town with a population of 21,908. I actually arrived here expecting this place to be worse, but when I arrived it looked like a whole bunch of money had just been spent on the place. The market square now features giant plant pots with trees. Fundamental mistake here, no tree guards. The locals are going to rip these trees out and use them for a demented javelin contest. This could be a positive though, as the empty plant pots could be used for a game of whack-a-mole using crackheads. That's a game that everybody could enjoy. The new shop frontage was attractive, and really, I didn't have too much to complain about. Gainsborough was officially the capital of England and Denmark for 5 weeks back in the year 1013 due to the invasion of a Viking king. That didn't last long because apart from the king dying, he had realised the gravity of his mistake when he saw his Viking soldiers becoming hooks on the local methamphetamines. Gainsborough is a funny old place because it's basically in South Yorkshire and it's a bit of a drive from anywhere else on today's list. The town certainly has a reputation. There's a lot of stats about the town that don't make for good reading. At the last check, the central neighbourhood was the 24th most deprived in the whole of the UK. Almost 11% of working age people here are receiving disability benefit. A third of children are living in poverty. There is also a lot of drugs here. You know you've got a problem when even the town councillor is convicted for her part in the drugs trade. I bet the town council meetings were a lot of fun at least. The crime rate is the second worst in Lincolnshire, 168 in 1,000. You don't really expect it because honestly it didn't look that bad. From what I can tell, it is on a path of improvement. The house price is also very low here with an average of 148,000. Gainsborough is a former industrial town and you can find remnants of industry all over the place. I especially enjoyed Marshall's Yard, a former factory-turned-shopping complex. It was very busy here, and that's good to see as they'd spent $4.3 million on this place. Love how the council immediately rewarded themselves for a place in the new development. Nice flashy offices for them. Unfortunately, with all the money being spent on certain parts of the town, other bits are suffering. But overall, not as bad as I was expecting. Not ugly, and the money has been spent better than a lot of towns I visit. The crime rate is terrible, but it's actually been improving year on year, and I thought Marshall's Yard was nice enough to give Gainsborough a middle-of-the-road finish. It is a turd, but one that doesn't splatter in the bowl. Number 4. Scunthorpe. Scunthorpe is a town with a population of 84,665. I've been to Southampton, but I've never been to Scunthorpe. Well, I have now, and I regret it. Yeah, you know what, I apologise, that joke really was the low-hanging fruit. I could have made another one, but my viewers don't appreciate vulgarity. It honestly isn't a good first impression when you go to Scunthorpe. Grim council flats towering over you as you enter, making you regret your life decisions. I was truly in a foul mood as I entered Scunthorpe. I was rolling on basically no sleep, my feet were on the verge of collapse as I limped my way around this dump. To be fair, I had done 35 miles at this point, and in this heat I was truly hobbling. It meant that I fit right in instantly. There have been recent efforts to improve the town, similar to our last entry of a nice town square at the bottom of the shops. However, I was the only person here, which makes you question if this was money well spent. This was all thanks to the levelling up money. Hilariously, most of this has gone on improvements to the town council building, with locals arguing that the money should have gone on something to benefit the local people. The shopping centre is a 60s-style nuclear bomb shelter, which to be fair has a decent range of shops. For some reason, lots of the empty shops have prime shop to rent on the signage, meaning that Logan Paul and KSI have fallen on hard times. Besides, I don't know if anything in Scunthorpe could be described as a prime shop. There is actually a lot of shopping streets here, but the longer you walk, the more smashed up and depressing it becomes. It starts getting more and more intimidating as you head up the street as more unscrupulous characters start to appear. They feel more at home in the derelict part of town. They are used to being surrounded by squalor. There is also 2 Greggs shops within crawling distance, which is ideal to be fair, because if one is waiting on new pizza slices to come out the oven, you can make it to the other shop and get one there first. The standard of housing isn't exactly impressive here. It's mostly depressing HMOs and Victorian back-to-back terraces. This month, Scunthorpe Council decided to bring in tougher rules, but the slum landlords challenged this, saying that Scunthorpe residents deserve to live in squalor. Fortunately, the council won that battle and tougher rules will now be in place. Fortunately, you don't have to rent off a slum landlord as Scunthorpe is relatively cheap, an average price of $159,000. Scunny is clearly lacking in any of the grand buildings from the past, meaning it's not even possible to imagine a time when it was nice here. This is because Scunthorpe is a relatively new town, which only started growing in the 1800s. I know that 1800s isn't exactly recent, but many places in Lincolnshire are much older. The town grew up around industry, specifically the iron industry. It's the last remaining British steel site in the UK. Not actually owned by us, it's owned by China. This thing is massive, and guess what? They want to close it down. Will it close or won't it close? It all seems to be hanging in the balance with 3,000 jobs on the line. If it does close, we would be the only nation in the G7 without the ability to produce our own steel. I can't help but think how screwed the residents will be if it closes. Sure, the plant is really ugly and it's hardly a great advertisement for Scunthorpe, but I doubt anybody chose to live here for the romantic scenery of the place. Maybe they should take lessons for number 2 on this list for what happens when you take a town's main industry away. There is a football team here, but for the life of me I couldn't find it, so I'm assuming it's some soulless out-of-town bowl. Now that I'm home, I can confirm that it is. There isn't exactly much to see or do here. There was a children's pig farm which was set on fire just the other day. Yay, let's make our town even worse and potentially harm animals at the same time. Yes, it's yet another Lincolnshire town with a high crime rate of 144 in 1,000. Can't blame this one on the foreigners, 85% of people in Scunthorpe were born here. Ultimately, the town has 2 options. If the steelworks closes, you may as well drop a bomb on the entire town. Alternatively, they could drop the sea and rebrand it as a holiday destination with a 60s theme. You could revisit the past, walk around the depressing post-World War II shopping centre, throw pound coins at homeless people, stay in one of the many boarded up rat pits, and end your day getting a pint glass lobbed at you in one of the many fine establishments. If Scunthorpe was a public toilet, it would be one of those cheap steel ones covered in stains, smelling bad, and is so horrible you probably can't bear to use it. Number 3, Skegness. At number 3, we've got that old famous seaside resort of Skegness with a population of 20,704. Skegness is a popular holiday spot for people in the north of England. You are allowed here if you're from the south, but for many it's just not worth braving crossing the north-south divide. The town is a strange anomaly because it isn't particularly ugly or run down. It also still seems to have some popularity with the elders of England. It didn't feel like a typical dead English seaside town. It still attracts 2.3 million visitors each year. There is still stuff to do. It has a nice beach and most of its shopping streets seem to be intact. What's the problem here? Well, for some reason, it not only has the worst crime rate for a seaside town in England, but also the worst in Lincolnshire, 174 in 1,000. Crime has doubled here since 2014, and the messed up thing is, it didn't even look bad at all. The streets I'm walking on are supposed to be some of the most deprived in England, but you wouldn't know it. The caravan sites have high occupancy rates, but not always for good reasons. Recently it was found out that a Bradford gang was running county lines out of caravans. Would you like some heroin with your fish and chips? It feels like every year a gang is taken down in Skegness only for a new one to take its place. It's actually crazy because when you realise how isolated Skegness is, if these gangs would leave it alone, it would be almost completely dry here, and a lot of issues would go away overnight. Maybe people entering the town should be checked out first. Are you miserable and over 80 years old? Great, welcome to Skeg Vegas. In all seriousness, drug issues are shockingly bad here, like most seaside towns, but it seems to be perhaps worse here than anywhere else. The other issue with Skegness is the poor education that locals receive, with around a third apparently having no qualifications at all. Around 42% of the population is also economically inactive, which means they're all either really old or really lazy. Mind you, I'd struggle to concentrate on working with the thrills of Skeg Vegas right on my doorstep. If you move here, you will likely never go anywhere else because it's so far away and isolated. On a good day, it could take an hour and 15 minutes to the nearest city of Lincoln. But let me tell you, in the summer, there aren't many good days and the journey can be far worse. At least there is frequent trains to Nottingham to get you out of this mess, but most of the jobs are in tourism here with around 9,000 people employed. I can imagine it can get really tough in the winter months. If you're retired, it might be okay with the cheap average house price of $198,000. The elderly love this place as backed up by data showing that the average age of a resident is 52 compared to the English average of 40. It's not the ugliest place I've ever been, there's definitely stuff to do, but I can imagine that in the winter this must be an absolute hellhole. The bleakest of bleak, turning to drugs may seem like a good option at the time. Number 2. Grimsby. Number 2 is the fishing town of Grimsby with a population of 85,911. I felt like I had the most to say about this town as I'd spent the most time here, using it as a sort of base for this trip. I'd spent 4 nights sleeping in my car at this point and I didn't have a single good night's sleep due to the heat, so I treated myself to a hotel. Bad choice, as I was immediately introduced to some typical Grimsby people. Now, I really don't like to swear, and I won't, but I seriously hope that this young lady gets the help she needs. I know how to help her. We talk a lot about deportations. Can we please get rid of some of our own people too whilst we're at it? She screamed, threatened, smashed, crashed and cried away into the early hours of the morning. I love how her Gollum boyfriend throws his beer down but then realises that he doesn't want to litter and he moves it to the bin. At some point in his life, this man was an upstanding member of society. Anyway, the entire hotel was very upset about the smackheads outside by the church as none of the windows could be fully closed. Poor dog walkers were met with torrents of abuse for daring to come within eyesight of her. I'm not exaggerating, this was a complete waste of money as again, I didn't get any sleep. This was my first introduction to Grimsby. Avoid this park area at all times, they seem to congregate here. I think they slept here. My second experience was in McDonald's, where an old man threatened the manager because his meal came out at 10p more than he expected. And my third experience was actually a positive one. I left my car in a gym car park in a slightly shifty looking part of town. I came out feeling like $1 million, but then soon realised I might not have a single dollar. My boot had been left open the entire time for an hour, and I started to panic as I imagined that all of my equipment had been stolen. The shocker was, not a single thing had been stolen. So thank you to the people of Grimsby for not robbing me. Restores your faith in humanity. I still don't understand how I didn't get robbed. Sorry, I've gone off on a tangent here. Does Grimsby live up to its name? It's pretty bad, I'm sorry. I sort of liked it though. It isn't boring, there's lots to see and do, and history is all around you. So much history which is mostly on the verge of collapse. Grimsby seems like an urban explorer's wet dream. Grimsby's main industry of cod fishing... it's about to get political once again, I'm sorry. Grimsby was once the biggest fishing port in the entire world with 861 registered vessels. As of 2022, there are 7. Due to the EU, these fishermen lost their rights to fish where they used to, and also bigger, more advanced EU vessels started to dominate our waters. Politician Ted Heath is a public enemy number 1 in Grimsby as he signed off on the original EU deal. Brexit caused a lot of arguments, but you can clearly see why this town voted in favour of it. They had a legitimate gripe, and Farage spoke directly to them. The loss of their fishing rights caused catastrophic damage to Grimsby town as around half the town had been employed in the industry and huge parts of the town were dedicated to the trade. The population reduced by around 20,000. The town resembles a graveyard now. The worst part is the Casbah. This large peninsula is a complete dump of Victorian architecture. I was shocked to learn that people are still living here. Fortunately, this area is due to have a massive upgrade to preserve the history and regenerate what they can. It was fascinating here, but sadly, lots of the streets were barricaded up. This whole area could serve as a museum to the rich history of the town. If you're in the area, I highly recommend a visit. It's one of the most interesting places I've ever been. The town also has a football league team, sort of. Grimsby town isn't actually located in Grimsby, it's in neighbouring Cleethorpes, because that would be far too embarrassing for all the away team's visitors. Actually, to be fair, a really great honest set of fans, and I do mean that, I like Grimsby town. Grimsby is pretty much home to Lincolnshire's only motorway, a road so bad that I thought I'd popped a tyre. Not sure why the surface is so terrible, maybe they were trying to make people slow down and rethink their visit to Grimsby. Moving on, the town centre is pretty nondescript. They seem to be spending some more money here, pulling down the 60s asbestos and tears shopping centre, so hopefully this is going to be looking better in a couple of years. But in terms of shopping right now, I couldn't imagine ever visiting here. It's pretty gloomy and not really fitting of a place the size of Grimsby. The majority of housing in Grimsby is slum terracing. It's very much copy and paste, with every street having at least one boarded up house. It's not County Durham levels of bad, but it is pretty depressing. It's not as cheap as Durham either, with the average price of $157,000. Amongst all the derelict factories, smashed up houses and gloomy atmosphere, the majority of people here seem to be decent hard-working folk just trying to get on with life. I felt safe enough here, minus the crackheads in the park. That does not excuse the high crime rate of 151 in 1,000, which, believe it or not, is only enough to take 4th spot in Lincolnshire. I'll say it again, I found it fascinating, I didn't hate it, and I think they were trying. It may even be better in a few years, but they have a massive job on their hands. There is just so much to do here. Take a newspaper and some grape juice, because this turd will not be quick or easy. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, the stench from this town has to be smelled to be believed. Number 1. Boston. And number 1 is the historic market town of Boston, with a population of 45,339. Yeah, for my American viewers, this is where Boston, Mass got its name. You might want to consider changing that now. Someone made the comment on my last video that historic market town is now code for it's rubbish. I absolutely hated it here. I'm still trying to decide in my head if I hate Boston or Wisbech more. They are similar in so many ways. The people living there is ultimately what makes a place good or bad, and Boston locals must have been some of the most impolite assholes I've ever had the misfortune of sharing the same breathing space with. I said breathing, not breeding. I have had it drummed into me since birth to let women pass on the side of the pavement furthest from the road, to get in the road if a pushchair is coming, to give elderly folk a bit of space, to hold doors, etc, etc. Turdtowns is a classical English gentleman, I know, and it really wound me up how people just pushed past, spat at their feet and even glared at me for trying to do the right thing. Not a single person thanked me, which led me to believe none of these people were raised right. I got to the point where I kept telling myself to stop. It's actually hard to break some habits than you may believe. I should have known better. It was all summed up by a moron cycling along a pavement with a cigarette dribbling out the corner of his mouth, almost crashing into an old lady who, for some reason, apologised to him. He sneered at her and carried on cycling. Now, I know I always say I'd never been here before, but in this case I have, once. And believe it or not, it was because of this ugly monstrosity right behind me, this asbestos-filled cowshed. It's got to be one of the worst football grounds for Team Boston United, which are sometimes in the Football League, believe it or not, so welcome to Boston. Why I came back here again, I'll never know. Just like Wisbech, this town could also be really nice. It has a lot of potential, but unfortunately you can't spend a single second admiring anything for fear of being robbed or barged into. It's yet another place where large gangs of people sit around all day doing absolutely nothing except creating a very unpleasant atmosphere. Surprisingly, the crime rate is only 128 in 1,000, which would be bad in most counties, but in Lincolnshire only takes 7th spot. I find that one hard to believe. So Wisbech does have it beat in that regard. To add to Boston's growing list of Turdtown credentials, it was once also the capital of UK obesity. Sadly, no longer, because people from Boston never win at anything. Still to this day, it's in the top 10 fattest towns, with 73.4% of people being overweight or obese. They have spent some money on redeveloping parts of the town centre, and it's still rubbish. The streets are empty, nobody's spending money because nobody in their right mind would come visit here for shopping. There was actually a market going on in this historic market town, which is something, I guess. Also like Wisbech, it has a filthy brown river which looks like pools of vomit and diarrhea washing downstream from the high amounts of Manjaro injected into the Boston residents. Large parts of the Boston population are from the Eastern European mainland, with just 68% of people born in the UK. Now, do you remember last week when I told you that Wisbech is the second most poorly integrated town in the UK? Well, guess where number 1 is? Yeah, it's Boston. More parallels between the two towns. Basically, the town has loads of people from mainland Europe, but you go just outside the town and everybody is English. This is a Brexit town represented by Reform's Richard Tice. He was voted in because many Boston residents reported feeling terrified of the town centre and it was turning into a no-go area. They demanded action. From what I can tell, sadly, not a lot has changed. The slum houses here aren't the greatest and they regularly get flooded. Just this year, 36 homes were briefly swallowed by the rising river, and they're still awaiting repairs 6 months on. On the plus side, this forms somewhat of a moat to keep the unwanted elements of Boston away from your house. If you want to live in a house with a real moat, you can buy a house here for an average price of 191,000. Seems a bit too high, but it is much closer to London than Grimsby is. But I preferred Grimsby, it was more interesting and felt less intimidating. There's a part of me that actually wants to go back to Grimsby to explore more, but I will never be coming back to Boston. As I go to leave, the sounds of sirens fill the air. A malnourished baby screams in the background as yet another bike rams into a pram on the pavement. It's okay, they're going to swim home to their black mould bedsits to eat dog food covered in flies from Boston Market. What hope does this baby have at life? Well, that's another log down the bog. I feel like I've made some real progress this summer in my quest to cover every county in the UK. Kind of glad I didn't head off to Ireland now, that would have distracted from the mission of the Summer of Turds. Let me know if you're interested in an episode of Turdtowns which includes the making of Turdtowns. There's a lot of stuff that does go on behind the scenes of my adventures that you're probably not aware of. Did you know that I actually visit way more places than you get to see? For example, I visited Mablethorpe and Spalding, two places you may have expected to see on this list. Mablethorpe has an incredibly low crime rate and it's been getting too much hate lately, and Spalding was actually nice minus huge groups of layabouts. Plus, if I do that video, you get to see much more footage shot inside the Dream Machine, the CX-5. It'll probably just be me moaning for an hour straight about how tired I am, but you know that you love watching footage of people less fortunate than you are. Not as flat as I was expecting, no need for butt pads around here. Was there anywhere missing from this list? Let me know down in the comments. Where on earth do we go next? Don't forget to hit like, share and subscribe to help Turdtowns thrive.